The day I entered the house as a bride, I thought I was stepping into a new chapter of happiness. The air smelled of roses. The walls were decorated with garlands, and the entire neighborhood had gathered to see me. My parents had tears in their eyes, tears of pride, mixed with sorrow. "This is your new home, Aisha," my mother whispered, pressing my hand tightly before letting it go. I smiled, hiding the storm of emotions inside me. Every girl dreams of her wedding day, and mine had been picture perfect, at least on the surface. I married Armin, a man chosen by my family. He was handsome, educated, and carried himself with an aura of success. I believed he would be my shield, my partner, the person who would hold my hand through every joy and every storm. But as the wedding lights dimmed and the guests left, reality began to creep in, silent, sharp, and merciless. The first evening, I was led into a lavish bedroom. Golden curtains swayed with the breeze, and a crystal chandelier sparkled overhead. Arman walked in, his face unreadable. "You should know something," he said, removing his watch and placing it on the dresser. My heart skipped. I looked at him with expectation. Maybe he was going to confess his love. Maybe he was nervous too. But his next words pierced me. "From today, remember one thing. You are here for my parents, not for yourself. My mother and father come first, always. Don't ever think you can demand my attention above theirs." I froze, my hands trembling with the heavy jewelry still clinking on my wrists. "Do you understand?" he asked, his voice stern. I nodded silently. Though my heart cracked in that very moment, the following days felt like walking barefoot on shards of glass. My mother-in-law, Shamim, scrutinized my every move. "You don't know how to make tea properly. What did your mother even teach you?" she hissed one morning as she poured the cup I had prepared straight into the sink. My father-in-law, Rashid, wasn't kinder either. "Why are you standing idle? Go iron my clothes. And remember, no crease should remain." I had just stepped into this household, yet I already felt like a servant. Whenever I looked at Armin for support, he looked away. Sometimes he even joined their criticism. "She's right, Aisha. You should learn faster. Don't embarrass me in front of my parents." Every word was like a dagger. The man I had married, the one I hoped would protect me, had turned into a stranger siding against me. One night, after a particularly long day of insults, I sat in my room holding the photo frame of my wedding day. I studied my own face in that picture, the girl who smiled in that white dress, eyes glowing with hope. Who was she? The door creaked and Shamim entered without knocking. "Why is this room still messy?" she snapped, glancing at my books stacked on the side table. "Do you think this is your parents' house? Here, you live by our rules. And remember, you have no place in Armin's life until I say so." She grabbed the photo frame and slammed it face down. "Your happiness depends on me. Disobey me, and you'll regret ever marrying my son." Her words echoed in my head long after she left. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, my heart heavy with a realization. I was trapped. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. My life revolved around chores, scoldings, and loneliness. I wasn't allowed to visit my parents without permission. I wasn't allowed to buy anything for myself. Even phone calls were monitored. One evening, I overheard Shamim whispering to Armin in the living room. "Don't let her fly too high," she said. "If she becomes too confident, she'll forget her place. Keep her under control." And Armin nodded. My husband, my supposed partner, agreed to clip my wings. But fate has a way of planting seeds of strength in the darkest soil. It started small, my own diary. Late at night, when everyone slept, I poured my heart onto paper. Each word was a rebellion, each page a quiet scream. "I will survive this. I will rise," I wrote one night, tears smudging the ink. And slowly, a fire began to kindle inside me. I began noticing things. Rashid's careless arrogance when he talked about shady deals on the phone. Shamim's obsession with controlling the family's image in society. And Armin's secret messages on his phone late at night. They thought I was weak, but weakness was becoming my disguise. I played the obedient wife on the surface, bowing my head, cooking, cleaning, smiling when required. But behind those lowered eyes, I was watching, learning, and waiting, because one day I promised myself I would not just break free, I would rise higher than they could ever imagine. That night, as I sat by the window, looking at the city lights flickering in the distance, I whispered to myself, they've chained me today, but tomorrow, these very chains will be my weapon. And with that vow, my story truly began. The house that looked grand from the outside had started revealing its rotting foundation. Every morning, I woke before sunrise to prepare breakfast. My hands worked endlessly, kneading dough, chopping vegetables, boiling tea, but my heart carried a heaviness no chore could distract me from. Shamim always found something wrong. This paratha is too thick, she would scold. The tea is too light. Why are you so slow? Nothing I did was ever good enough. Arman, meanwhile, rarely looked at me anymore. His days were spent working at the family business. And his evenings, well, those were mysteries I had started to notice. One evening, I stood at the balcony folding clothes when I heard laughter. Armin was in the driveway, phone pressed to his ear. His face glowed in a way I hadn't seen in months. Not with me, but with whoever was on the other side of the call. Don't worry, I'll meet you tomorrow. Same place, he whispered, his voice low but filled with excitement. I froze, my fingers clutching the fabric in my hand. Who was he talking to? Why did his tone change so drastically when it wasn't me? When he saw me on the balcony, he quickly ended the call and pretended to check his messages. That night, lying beside him, I couldn't sleep. His phone buzzed with a notification. I turned slightly, pretending to adjust my pillow, and glimpsed the screen. A heart emoji blinked back at me from a saved contact named only as S. My chest tightened. Who was S? The next morning, I tried to gather courage. Armin, I asked gently, is everything okay between us? You seem distant, he scoffed. Not everything is about you, Aisha. Stop imagining problems. Focus on making this house run smoothly. His dismissive tone cut deeper than any insult. But instead of breaking, I quietly began to observe more. Soon, the cracks widened. Shamim started demanding that I hand over any jewelry or gifts my parents had given me. You don't need these, she said, unclasping bangles from my wrists. Everything here belongs to this family now. You're just a part of it. I wanted to scream, to snatch them back, but I swallowed my pride. For now, Rashid, on the other hand, grew careless with his secrets. I often overheard him speaking loudly on the phone about deals that didn't sound legal. Words like under the table and cash only slipped into his conversations. I noted everything silently, as if every word were a weapon I'd need one day. My only moments of peace came when I visited the rooftop late at night. I would look at the stars, whispering to myself, you are stronger than they think. Don't let them break you. But fate, once again, had its way of testing me. One evening, when Armin was in the shower, his phone lit up on the nightstand. Another message from S. Can't wait to see you tonight. My hands shook as I picked it up. My heart pounded, but I unlocked the phone with the code I had secretly observed him use before. There it was. A string of messages. I miss you. Dinner tomorrow. You looked stunning yesterday. And then, pictures. Selfies of a woman I had never seen before. Her face glowing, her smile intimate. I felt the ground slip beneath my feet. This wasn't just emotional neglect. This was betrayal. When Armin came out, water dripping from his hair, I placed the phone back quietly and pretended to sleep. Inside, though, a storm was raging. For days, I acted normal, I smiled when required, cooked, cleaned, listened to their insults. But in my diary, my words grew sharper. They've underestimated me. He thinks I won't fight back, but soon the mask will fall. And when it does, I won't be the one left broken. The turning point came unexpectedly. One afternoon, Rashid called me into the study to fetch a file. While searching, I found a stack of papers carelessly shoved into the drawer. Contracts, receipts, and bank transfers, all hinting at money laundering through the company. I stuffed one paper into my dress pocket before leaving. Later that night, under the dim light of my bedside lamp, I studied it carefully. The evidence was undeniable. That's when a new idea began to take root. If I couldn't win against them in their house, I would win outside it. I started learning quietly. Whenever I had free time, I used Armand's laptop when he was away. I searched for business terms, legal rights of wives, ways to trace financial fraud. My fingers trembled, but each search gave me more clarity. In the shadows of oppression, I was building strength. I realized I couldn't just expose Armand's affair. It would make me look like a jealous wife. But if I combined it with his family's corruption, if I showed the world who they truly were, I could destroy their empire from the roots. One night, as I stared at the ceiling unable to sleep, I whispered to myself, "They think I'm weak. They think I'm trapped. But soon, I will show them. My silence is not weakness. It's preparation." And for the first time since my wedding, I didn't feel powerless. I felt dangerous. For weeks after finding the receipts, Aisha lived in two worlds: daylight obedience inside the house and midnight investigation at her bedside. By day she cooked, cleaned, and bowed her head while Shamim picked faults. By night she became something else. Alert, methodical, hungry for proof. She started small and simple. Every scrap of paper she could find went into a hidden folder inside her sari drawer. A taxi receipt here, a typed note shoved in a book there, an embroidered handkerchief with a phone number stitched into the hem. Nothing was too small. If lived people made mistakes, paper remembered. People like Rashid thought details were meaningless. Aisha discovered they were the only things that could topple them. Her first ally arrived unexpectedly, the household cleaner, Beno. An elderly woman with a mouth as sharp as a needle and a heart that had weathered 100 storms, had been kind to Aisha since the wedding. One afternoon, after Shamim snapped at Aisha for burning a pot of lentils, Bano slipped her a small envelope. "Keep your ears open, Beta," she whispered. "I see and I hear. They think I'm blind." Inside the envelope were two things: a torn memo and the name of a bank branch where Rashid occasionally met men in suits. Aisha felt a flicker of gratitude and relief. She wasn't alone. Next, she turned her attention to the one place Armin assumed she didn't go: the home office. While making tea one afternoon, she distracted the family dog and slipped past the half-closed door. Safely inside, she scanned the desk. Piles of bills, a locked drawer, a small notepad with shorthand that might have meant nothing to anyone else. Her hands trembled. She snapped a photo with the old phone she had hidden in her dupatta. Quick, silent, practiced. She learned to steal time in seconds. That week she made a silent list: bank receipts, offshore transfer confirmations, the notepad, and one more thing she needed badly: independent testimony. Paper alone might look like coincidence. A voice, a witness, someone who could say, "Yes, I saw him sign it," would turn suspicion into action. Aisha started to look beyond the house. She remembered her neighbor at the old apartment, Ms. Farouk, a retired school teacher who once tutored Armin's younger cousin. Farouk was gentle but sharp, with a memory like a ledger. Aisha walked to her house, under the pretense of borrowing a pressure cooker. Over chai, she pried at the past, asking casual questions about the business, the family's habits, old guests who came late, And landlords who once complained about strange deliveries. You're asking a lot. Child, Ms. Farouk warned, stirring sugar. But when Aisha slipped a photograph of Rashid and an older man from a newspaper into her palm, the teacher frowned. That man, he was always around when accounts were counted. They spoke in whispers. I remember now. Ms. Farouk jotted a name down. A small-time accountant who used to work for Rashid years ago. You want his number? I'll call him. Within days, the accountant, a nervous middle-aged man named Imtiaz, agreed to meet Aisha in secret. He'd been paid in cash once and promised to keep quiet, but guilt and fear had a way of loosening lips over years. In a cramped tea stall with steam and chai-scented fumes, Imtiaz shuffled papers from a battered briefcase and showed her copies of ledger entries. Coded, messy, but unmistakable. They called it project maintenance, he said. When I asked, they laughed it off. Later, when the transfers got bigger, I stopped asking. I was scared. Aisha recorded every word on the small voice recorder she'd hidden in her departer. Voices mattered. They turned speculation into testimony. She left the tea stall with a breath that felt like a small victory. Simultaneously, she learned the language of the law. The internet at Armin's office, when he was away, became her textbook. She read about property rights, wills, joint ownership, and how a house could be claimed. The law was dense with caveats, but it also contained bullets she could use. If she could prove that the family business had been financed through illegal transfers and that assets were being diverted, civil suits and criminal complaints could be filed. More importantly, public exposure could freeze the family's position long enough for her to claim what she deserved. Aisha also started talking carefully. She reached out to an old college friend, Zara, who now worked at a local NGO that helped women with legal advice. Zara listened without judgment and, when Aisha showed her a photograph of one ledger, whispered, "This is tampering, We can help file a complaint, but you must be ready. These people will not go quietly." Zara connected Aisha to a lawyer who specialized in family and financial crimes. The first meeting was brief and hushed. The lawyer's eyes were practical, not heroic. "You have pieces," he said, flipping through the photos and files. "You need a chain of custody. We can't scream. We must prove. Let me help you document properly." He taught her how to make copies that would be admissible, how to timestamp digital evidence, and the careful way to approach the police without being dismissed. He warned of backlash, counter-accusations, reputation smearing, and the family's reach. But he also gave her a plan: gather indisputable documents, secure testimony from people like Imtiaz, and prepare a single, decisive public moment where all evidence would be undeniable. Aisha spent nights following this plan. She returned to the Home Office and, with Bano's help, found a hidden ledger tucked behind a false panel. Its pages smelled of cigar smoke and old ink. Names, numbers, and coded references to a property purchase were scrolled inside. Dates that matched the transfers she'd photographed. She copied pages, took careful photos, and left a decoy note to suggest nothing had been touched. At the same time, she collected softer evidence. The bank teller who remembered Rashid's cash deposits, the receptionist at a hotel who had seen an envelope change hands late at night, and the maid who had seen Armin slipping out with a woman. Each narrative alone lacked lethal force. Together, they were a net. Building the net took patience. When Aisha felt fear, she wrote in her diary, "Fear is temporary. Truth is relentless." The sentence became a mantra. One evening, as she pieced together spreadsheets and printed copies in the kitchen, her phone vibrated. It was Zara. "We have a slot," she whispered. "There's a small social program next week. The family will be there. If you want to go public, that's your moment. But be careful. This will change everything." Aisha looked at the calendar, then closed her eyes. The family's next public gathering, a charity event celebrating Rashid's philanthropy, would fill the house with guests, press, and cameras. It was the perfect stage. All their faces in one place, all their secrets within reach of the light. She imagined the confrontation, the ledger projected, the lawyer calmly explaining transfers, Imtiaz and Ms. Farouk, ready to testify, the police waiting at the edge of the crowd. Her stomach flooded with fear and a sharper thrill. This was not merely revenge. It was exposure, justice, validation for all the small humiliations she'd silently endured. When Aisha finally placed the last documented copy into an envelope and sealed it, she felt the weight lift slightly. The plan was not yet perfect, but it existed. She had allies, evidence, and a public moment to aim for. She whispered to the empty kitchen, to the framed wedding photo, still face down in the drawer. I will not be invisible anymore. They taught me how to bow. I learned how to stand. And for the first time since the garlands had fallen from the doorway on her wedding night, Aisha slept with a mind that hummed, not with fear, but with resolve. The charity gala was everything the Malik family prided themselves on. Chandeliers dripping with light, velvet curtains, tables heavy with food, and cameras ready to capture their so-called generosity. Guests in glittering saris and tailored suits murmured praises as Rashid and Shamim glided across the hall, their smiles rehearsed, their hands raised in false humility. Aisha walked in quietly, wrapped in a deep blue silk sari that shimmered under the lights. She looked every inch the dutiful wife, head bowed slightly, her gold bangles chiming softly as she carried a tray of welcome drinks. Only she knew what she had hidden inside her clutch, a USB drive with documents, voice recordings, and scanned ledger pages. Armin barely glanced at her. He was busy greeting guests, laughing too loudly, soaking in admiration. Melissa hovered near him, radiant in silver, as though she were the hostess instead of Aisha. For years, they had performed this act of dominance and invisibility, Melissa at the center, Aisha at the shadows. Tonight, the roles would change. The evening began with speeches. A local journalist praised the family's dedication to progress. Shamim spoke about legacy and sacrifice. Rashid bragged about the family's businesses, funding education and health. The crowd clapped. The cameras flashed. No one could have guessed the storm quietly building. When Rashid finished, the MC announced, "And now, we invite Mrs. Aisha Malik to share a few words on behalf of the family." It was unusual. Normally, Aisha was excluded from speeches, but she had planned for this. She rose slowly, her heels steady against the marble floor, her clutch pressed tightly in her hand. The crowd's chatter softened. "Good evening," Aisha began, her voice calm, almost too calm. "I stand here tonight, not only as a daughter-in-law of this family, but as a woman who has seen the truth." A ripple moved through the hall. Guests leaned forward. Rashid's smile stiffened. Shamim's eyes narrowed. Armin shifted uncomfortably. Aisha continued, pulling the USB from her clutch and holding it between two fingers like a blade. "For years, I believed I was part of a family built on respect and honor. But honor cannot survive in the dark. And tonight, I will show you what really lies beneath this golden surface." She nodded toward Zara, seated near the front. Zara stood quickly, walking to the projector that the lawyer had discreetly arranged. Within seconds, the screen lit up. The first slide appeared. A scanned ledger page, numbers circled in red. Amounts that were too large, too frequent, too suspicious. A murmur broke out among the guests. Next came screenshots of emails. Rashid's correspondence with offshore contacts, coded words about project maintenance that matched the ledger entries. Then, voice recordings. Rashid's voice promising to move the funds before anyone noticed. His tone was unmistakable. Gasps filled the hall. Some guests covered their mouths. Others raised their phones, recording everything. The Malik's carefully constructed image was shattering in real time. "Stop this nonsense!" Rashid bellowed, storming toward the screen. But the lawyer stepped forward, calm and firm. "Sit down, sir. This evidence is already secured with the authorities. Tonight is simply for transparency." Aisha's heart pounded, but her face remained serene. She had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in her mind. The silence, the shock, the fall. The final slide appeared. A photo of Rashid and Arman, meeting an official at a hotel, exchanging an envelope, the timestamp, the receipts, the ledger entries. All aligned perfectly. The crowd erupted. "Fraud," someone whispered. "They lied to us," another gasped. Journalists rushed forward, snapping photos, already typing furious headlines into their phones. Shamim stumbled back into a chair, pale as chalk. Melissa's mouth opened, then closed, her silver dress suddenly looking like cheap foil. Armin clenched his fists, his mask of charm crumbling into panic. Aisha turned toward him, her voice steady but sharp. "You humiliated me, dismissed me, treated me like nothing. But I watched, I listened, and now the world will see you for what you are." The room buzzed with whispers, judgment, condemnation. Armin tried to lunge toward the laptop, but Zara blocked him, her expression fierce. "Touch it, and you'll only dig deeper." Police officers, already tipped off by the lawyer, entered the hall quietly, their uniforms cutting through the glitter and glamour. They moved straight to Rashid, presenting a warrant. "Sir, you're under investigation for financial misconduct. Please come with us." Gasps turned into chaos. Guests scrambled, some leaving quickly to avoid association, others staying to watch the downfall of the powerful family. Rashid shouted, Shamim sobbed, Melissa hid her face, and Armin froze, his arrogance collapsing under the weight of reality. Through it all, Aisha stood calm, her sari glowing under the lights, her eyes unflinching. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply watched as the family that had caged her was dragged into the very darkness they had built. As Rashid was escorted out, he turned back, eyes blazing. "You'll pay for this, girl." Aisha met his gaze and answered softly, "I already have. Tonight, it's your turn." The crowd applauded. Some clapped in admiration, others in relief, as though the truth had freed them too. Journalists swarmed Aisha, asking for comments, but she only said one line. "Truth doesn't need me to shout. It speaks for itself." When the police cars pulled away and the glittering hall settled into stunned silence, Aisha walked toward the exit, her heels clicking against marble like a drumbeat of liberation. She no longer bowed her head. She no longer carried the weight of silence. For the first time in years, she breathed without fear. The night of the gala felt like both an ending and a beginning. As Aisha stepped into the cool night air, the city around her buzzed with rumors. Social media lit up with videos from the event. Headlines screamed across the internet. Malik family scandal, exposed at charity gala. Daughter-in-law reveals, decades of fraud. Once powerful Maliks face humiliation and arrest. By morning, the world knew everything. The Maliks, once untouchable, were now the subject of national disgrace. Rashid's empire collapsed within days. The government froze his accounts. His allies distanced themselves. And his companies crumbled like a house built on sand. Shamim withdrew from society, unable to face the whispers. Melissa disappeared from public view, her silver gowns now useless relics of a past drenched in stolen wealth. And Armin, he spiraled. Friends turned away, business partners cut ties, and the mask of charm he wore so proudly was ripped away. Alone, humiliated, and powerless, he finally tasted the bitterness he had forced Aisha to swallow for years. But for Aisha, life was only beginning. She moved into a modest but warm apartment in the heart of the city. No chandeliers, no marble floors, no servants bustling about. Just sunlight spilling through windows, shelves lined with books, and a balcony where she could sip tea in peace. For the first time in years, her mornings were her own. She no longer had to bow to anyone, no longer had to cook for people who treated her like a servant, no longer had to live in silence. Zara visited often, bringing flowers and laughter. "You're trending again," she teased one morning, holding up her phone. A video of Aisha's calm words at the gala had gone viral. People admired her courage, her strength, her quiet dignity. She didn't scream. She didn't fight. She just showed the truth. One tweet read, "Women like Aisha remind us that silence is not weakness." Another said, messages poured in, from women trapped in controlling families, from young girls who felt powerless, from strangers who simply wanted to thank her for proving that dignity could be louder than revenge. Aisha read each message with quiet tears. She never wanted fame, but if her story gave courage to even one person, then her pain had meaning. One afternoon, she was invited to speak at a women's leadership forum. At first, she hesitated. For years, her voice had been dismissed, mocked, and silenced. Could she really stand before a crowd and let it carry her truth? But when she stepped onto the stage, the audience rose in applause. She took a deep breath and spoke, her words steady. "I was told to stay silent. I was told my worth depended on obedience. But silence only fed their power. The day I chose truth, I chose freedom. And freedom, sisters, is the greatest inheritance we can give ourselves." The hall erupted in applause. For the first time, Aisha didn't feel invisible. She felt seen, respected, and valued. Months passed, and the Malik name became a cautionary tale. The empire built on lies remained in ruins. Rashid and Arman faced trials, their arrogance reduced to courtroom shame. Melissa attempted to deny her part, but evidence tied her too closely. Meanwhile, Aisha built something new. With support from Zara and other women she had met, she started a foundation for women trapped in oppressive families. It offered legal aid, counseling, and safe spaces. Slowly, it grew. Donors admired her courage. Volunteers joined her cause, and women came forward with stories of their own every time she signed a grant, every time she welcomed a woman into safety. Aisha felt the quiet satisfaction of building something real. Not on greed, but on compassion. One evening, sitting on her balcony with tea in hand, Zara asked, "Do you ever regret it, exposing them like that?" Aisha smiled faintly, watching the sunset paint the sky. Regret? No. Pain, yes. But regret? Never. If I had stayed silent, I would have lost myself completely. At least now I know who I am. Zara nodded, her eyes warm. And the world knows too. Aisha laughed softly. She didn't need the world to know. She just needed herself. 6 months after the gala, she returned to the hall where it all happened. The chandeliers were still there, but the atmosphere was different. Lighter, freer. This time, she wasn't a shadow. She was the keynote speaker. As she walked onto the stage, her sari flowing like water, the crowd rose again in applause. Cameras flashed, not for the Maliks, but for her. She stood tall, her voice resonant. I was once told that silence was the duty of a good wife. That obedience was honor, but I say this to you, honor is not in silence. It is in truth. And truth, no matter how dangerous, will always win. The crowd roared. And in that moment, Aisha knew the girl who had once been humiliated, ignored, and diminished was gone. In her place stood a woman unshakable, unafraid, and unbroken. She didn't just survive the Maliks. She rose above them, and that was her ultimate victory.